Hey folks, welcome back to Sub2 Investor. In this episode, I will be analyzing a actual deal. Now this is a cool episode because it's an actual subject to deal. The fellow has under contracts in Columbus, Ohio. It's a duplex property that he plans to hold for a long-term rental. Now, there's various interesting components about this deal. He will be doing a large rehab. It's also a seller finance hybrid deal, so there's not only a Sub2 loan, but a seller carryback portion to the deal as well. And since he's planning to do a long-term rental with this property, this is a chance for me to showcase the long-term rental tab on my Deal Evaluator. I added this long-term rental tab due to popular demand and request so that you can look at the performance of a subject to deal if you plan to hold it as just a long-term rental. Lots of great content in this deal analysis. If you're able to just bear through, there's some nitty-gritty details, but lots of golden nuggets in here. I always learn so much from analyzing deals together with other people as a community. Oh, and if you're wondering how to get the Deal Evaluator, you just go to my website, sub2investor.com, and you can get it there. Anytime I make an upgrade, I re-upload the Deal Evaluator onto my website, so you'll always have access to new updates and upgrades. So that's really cool and exciting. If you go out and buy my Deal Evaluator, I'm happy to give you one complimentary analysis of a deal. Granted that we can record it like this, and I can put it out there to the community so that we can all learn from analyzing deals together. I always learn something new, and I hope you find this episode informative for your own investing business.
I don't know. I've been looking for some properties for a while, but then of course the first one was a Sub2 deal. So I wanted to kind of make sure it might actually be just an obvious good deal, but I wanted to at least make sure that I wasn't, overlooking anything major that I was missing on this one. So.
Have you done a Sub2 or any real estate investments before?
No, I did the whole thing where I go to look at properties and then I do the paralysis analysis and don't buy anything, and then look back 2 years later and say, oh, well, I wish I would have bought that. So my plan is to buy just a couple a year and for the next 5-6 years, and then just go from there and see. And but I just want to make sure. I know they don't have to be home run deals, but I just want to make sure they're ones that make sense. Yeah, obviously, it's getting tighter and tighter to make the deal make sense in some places.
Cool. Yeah, so you're looking at potentially your first deal. You are under contract on this one, though. Is that right?
Yep. So I can kind of break it down a little bit for you to give you an idea. So he bought it in 2022 for $430,000, and I think the guy, he was out of state. I think he's from New York, and he's bought a bunch of properties, and I think he's getting married, moving states, and switching jobs like all within this month. So the past few months he's been just offloading everything, and this was the last one from my understanding. So he wanted to sell it conventionally, but the problem was, nobody would really touch it. It's a $450,000 purchase price is what he wants, and nobody would really touch it at 7%. And then the other option was to sell to a house hacker. He needs to sell it, now rather than wait. And his tenants are there in August and January is when they're going to be, their lease is going to be up. So he ended up doing creative financing and doing Sub2. What we had originally agreed on was, so the place was weird. The auditor had it as a 3-bed, 1-bath, and it ended up being a 3-bed, 2-bath. So he just wanted $450 really to break even for the most part, like after fees and everything. There's a place identical to it that's renovated that's about $525. It's the exact same house, really. It's same square foot, 3-bed, 2-bath, and all that. Yeah, he's wanting to sell it for $450, and what we'd agreed on terms wise was, I think he has a 411 left on the principal. At first we thought it was 407, so the numbers were, I'd give him $20,000 up front, and then the rest of the $23,000 would be at 6.5 interest rate, but it's 411 now, so it'd be $19,000 left on the 6.5 interest rate. Yeah, we thought it was going to be maybe $20K each side, maybe $30K. I said on the high end, maybe $60K renovations, but now it's looking like there'd be more after we walked it. I walked it with an inspector and a contractor, and Yeah, the contractor said roughly 80,000 ish would be like 40 each unit, is what he was looking at. So I guess my big thing, well, so the other part of it is he's renting it out now for 1250 roughly a month. I think one's like 1225 and one's 1350 or so. His PITI is 2550. After he pays the property manager and takes out, vacancy and maintenance, he's losing a little bit a month. So the market rent in the area, this is kind of the big upside with it. So the market rent in that area is on average for those comparative houses, it's like 1850 on average. The high end is, there's a place next door that's renting for 21, another one's renting for 22, and the low end is like 1675, that lowest percentile. So, and he's renting for 1250 or 1300 roughly each unit. So he kind of just bought it, and then he didn't do any repairs or anything or any much maintenance, and he just rented out for lower. My original plan was to rehab both units and then rent them out for about 2,000. But one of the tenants has been there for a really long time. So that's the big first question. One of the tenants has been there for a really long time. She's a great tenant. She's paying, I think, 1,300 right now, but she takes care of the place and she just has some maintenance things that need done to the place. So I was planning on just either turning that place over and rehabbing it and taking it to 2,000, or keeping her there, raising it like 200 a month, and then getting all the stuff taken care of that she needs, and then just kind of dodging that vacancy and the front end cost for the property manager to do that turnover. So that was kind of what I was debating on doing for her.
Cool. And what's the interest rate on the first position loan?
4% is what's that.
All right. So I think I got some numbers here. That's good. That's all good information. The seller carry, so it's a $19,000. So this is a hybrid deal technically. Well, hold on a second. Let me back up. Are you working through a real estate agent on this, or how did you find the deal?
One of my good buddies is a real estate agent. He's actually representing the buyer and seller on this one. And I approached him about it and kind of just started reading everything possible about Sub2. Came across you, and yeah, it was just basically seeing if I'm missing anything big. I know like the big risk is the due on sales clause and all that. I hired an attorney for it and, trying to get it all in writing. So I got everything kind of covered.
Yeah, no, that's good. So I'm always interested in where people get deals. So it sounds like, did you see this one on Zillow, or were you represented by this agent and he said, hey, I have a client who can't sell, maybe they'd be doing a subject to?
Yeah, that was it.
That one? Okay, interesting. That's a unique situation. I mean, most agents aren't even privy to subject to at all. You got lucky.
He's great. Yeah, he owns like 9 himself. He actually moved from Portland to Columbus to invest in Columbus market because he's pretty bullish on it.
Okay.
Then he became a real estate agent, kind of like in retrospect, after he was already a real estate investor. That's kind of what his niche is just investing and finding deals for investors.
Okay. So your exit strategy, is it to hold it as a rental and do both? Rent out both units, or were you looking to house hack?
I might just rent it out to both units, long-term rental. Yep.
And let me share my screen then real quick here. So ARV, we were saying that you had a comparable property. Can you see my screen okay?
Yeah, it looks good. It was about 525, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. You have like a near identical property that sold for 525. So that's an ideal world. We want a few more comps to make sure we're on par for that, but we'll just go with 525 for now. You're buying it. Let's just put the total purchase price on this line here. So that's going to be the 411 plus the 19. So 430 is where you're buying it at. Is that right?
It's actually going to be 450 is the purchase price for it.
Okay, where's the other 20 coming in? So because we got 411 on the Sub2 loan and then 19 on the seller carry, right?
The purchase price is 450. There's 411 left on the loan balance, and I was going to give him 20,000 as a down payment, and then the rest at 6.5 interest rate over.
Oh, okay, yeah. Right, gotcha. So 20 down, 19 carried. So just make sure we got it right here. 411 plus 20 plus 19 equals 450. Gotcha. So 450 purchase price. Let's just come down here to the cash to seller and just put the the $20,000 in there right off the bat. And then that leaves the 411 plus on the sub-2 loan plus the 19 on the seller carry. So that's 430 in terms of total loan balances. No wholesaler involved in this one, but are you paying a realtor commission on this?
No.
Okay. So that's coming out of his down payment. Okay. That's perfect.
Yeah, and which is kind of why, like, the purchase price, even with the repairs, is probably pretty solid at 450, and then the cash to seller is probably pretty solid because he's going to be coming out of pocket for the realtor commission.
Yeah, he's pretty motivated to get a deal done here, is what it sounds like.
Yep.
Great. So closing cost wise, do you have any idea what's it put here?
I just looked at it. I think there's like some county taxes. I think were like roughly $3,000. I think it was.
Right.
I don't know if it'd be under that or not. I don't have any closing costs other than it just said. I just looked at the promissory note and it was like $3,000 for the county taxes or something like that.
Yeah, the taxes are escrowed in his loan payment, probably. Correct?
Yeah, but I think there's not that he was behind on anything, but I'll have to pull it up. I actually just saw it today. They emailed it to me this morning, but there's like a $3,000 fee and it said like county taxes. And I literally pulled it up at 10 minutes before this meeting because I just got it.
Does Ohio have a transfer tax?
It says the prorations and adjustments, county taxes from January to May is $1,039.
But here's the thing. So on Sub2 deals, title companies get confused about this. He's been paying the January, February, March, April, May taxes in his mortgage payment.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the year, his lender goes and pays the tax bill because they've been collecting it every single month in escrow. So on a Sub2 deal, if the taxes are being escrowed in the loan payment, which 90% of the time they are, then you don't prorate the taxes. Like you're not going to pay anything for taxes because they've already been escrowed in his account. So you'll need to get with your title company and make sure they understand that.
Yeah, I think actually I see what happened because at the bottom of this it says buyer due from buyer is $428,000. So I circled it, sent it over to the realtor, and asked like, did they write this in wrong or did they include it as a Sub2? And he said it looks like they wrote it in wrong. So I got to message them and have them do an addendum. So we have a lawyer that's written out the actual Sub2 terms, like an attorney, but I think the title company got that confused. So you're absolutely right because I don't think I will have to pay that. Yeah, that's not gonna be due on signing. So I'm not taking a loan out for this. So they just mixed that up. So
good. Okay. But you got some attorney costs and then probably some title fees. So you're probably looking at a couple grand for closing costs, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. How about we just put 2,000 for now?
Yeah.
Okay. Repairs, I know we don't really know exactly, but do you want to put 60 in there? Do you want to put 80 in there?
Just put 80, and then if it's lower, then good deal.
And are you borrowing any private money to fund the deal?
No.
Self-funding? Okay. Private money lending costs are not a thing we're going to worry about then. Other back-end expenses. I can't think of anything in your scenario that you would put in there at the moment. So, okay. Let's go to these Sub2 loan terms real quick. So, no loan arrears. His original balance on the loan, do you have any idea? We can just go kind of rough numbers on these.
Like what he actually took the loan out for?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it may have been a VA loan, or he may have put a little bit down. I know he has 411, 376 left, and his purchase price was 430, and he's had it for 2 years. So,
okay, yeah,
he probably put like 10,000 down. If it's probably what he did.
Let me just look it up on PropStream real quick, and I'll go off of what PropStream has as the original loan balance. This isn't super important, but it's going to, since you're taking over this loan, you kind of want to know, like, where are you in the amortization table? Like, what's your principal pay down look like, right? So
I think it was March of 2022. It was either March or May, so something like that.
Got it. Have you gotten a mortgage statement yet from the seller? The reason I ask is you definitely, obviously need that. And then just to confirm the terms of the loan. And if you can pull up what the principal and interest payment is, that'd be great.
Yep. So the interest right now is $658. Or just that interest, sorry. The principal payment right now is $658.91. The interest is $1,356.79.
P&I is $2,015.70. Okay. We're not super far off here. So it's possible that that loan amount was actually, he could, if it's VA, he possibly put, wow, look at that. He put 0 down. That's amazing. This is such a common thing that you find. I'm buying one right now with the exact same thing. 0 down, over leveraged. Oh, we're a little bit above. My bad. I thought we were perfect on that. I'll just tweak here real quick. All right. You can go ahead and fill this in later, but we're somewhere around this. Like that's pretty darn close right there. Okay. So 4% interest rate. And then on the second tab, you can come over here and just take a look at that amortization table. You know, come to our month right now, May of 2024, and that principal balance should be about $404,000, somewhere around here. So that's that. Do you have a taxes for 2023 or 2024? Probably hasn't come out yet.
I just had it pulled up. So it is. All right, here we go. So it looks like in the last breakdown, the taxes were $154. So I guess for that month. So I guess it says $1,848, but yes, it's principal, interest, and then in the escrow it has taxes and insurance.
Okay, so is that 1848? Is that for the taxes and the insurance, or just the taxes? In other words, does that mortgage statement have the escrow amount each month?
Yeah, it says explanation of amount due. Principal is $658, interest is $1356, and it says escrow, taxes, insurance, mortgage insurance. It says $154 for the taxes, $97 for the insurance, and mortgage insurance is $286.
Oh, there is mortgage insurance.
Looks like it has yeah. Actually, I just noticed that one.
You said this is a VA loan or a FHA loan? Do you know? Might be an FHA.
Yeah, exactly. It has PMI. I was assuming it was a VA loan, but it might be an FHA loan actually.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing it right here.
Okay. Yeah. If it has the PMI, then it's
Probably
likely a FHA. Yeah. So that's one thing to keep note of, because once you get to a certain equity percentage, you might be able to get that PMI off, but you'll have to bite the bullet on it for the time being. So I kind of annualized the taxes and the insurance based on those numbers that you told me. The PMI per month, you said was
286.
Okay. So I'll just annualize that, and I know I'm just going to put it, I really should have a separate column for PMI, but I'm just going to put it in the HOAs section just to have something there. So this is annualized because we want to make sure that we're including that number in there. You know what I'm saying? So we have your yearly taxes, your yearly insurance, and then this isn't HOA, this is actually PMI. So the total PITI, just like you said, I have 2550.
Yep.
Okay. Good deal. Is there anything else that we're missing in terms of the loan assumptions?
I honestly don't think so. That's what I was just checking now, but I think that we have it all in there.
Got it. Okay. So here's the thing with this calculator. So we got your PITI. The A stands for association dues if it's an HOA, but there's no HOA. We're just putting in the PMI in that field. I'll probably add just a PMI row here just to have it. Then we have to factor in also your 6.5% seller carry note. So have you ran is there a balloon on that, by the way, for that 19 grand?
So that was the other, basically where we're at was, and that's, the next thing I got to figure out. All of this was kind of preliminary under the assumption that the inspection would be about $50,000 for renovations and everything, and nothing crazy. Obviously it went up. So right now, I think that it was going to be 23,000 at 6.5, which worked out to about $125. But now with this information, I'm going to go back and kind of renegotiate this deal a little bit, but something that still benefits both of us. But he said, I know the down payment is kind of because he's paying the closing fees to the seller. It's to the selling agent. You know, he doesn't want to come out of pocket on like $26K without having any money towards that. So yeah, 20,000 down can stay, and then the purchase price at 450. He wants to kind of break even-ish. He's going to lose a little bit of money on it, but he wants 450. So I can't really negotiate that right now. The term is at 7 years, but my plan was to see if he'd do 10 years and then do 0% on that remaining 19K, and then that's that. Knowing
Awesome.
now, like show them the inspection report, show them the contractor quote, and say, well, we thought it was gonna be like $40,000-$50,000. It's gonna be about 80. So I'd be willing to keep doing it if we could do this 0% for that remaining balance, and then do 10 years rather than 7.
That's good. That's a really good idea. And since you're on the market, since this is with a realtor, I mean, that's kind of the rhythm of the back and forth negotiation. After the inspection, you come back. I mean, that's standardly how it happens on the market. He's probably holding his breath, waiting for you to get back with the results of the inspection, and I'm sure he's anticipating some sort of negotiation. So that's pretty standard. You know, like when I'm negotiating with the seller directly and it's a good deal, I'm trying not to do this. I'm trying not to come back and say, oh, well, there's this, and this, and we're going to have to bring you down, because if it's a good deal,
you don't
anyways, then just go. Yeah, you're just trying to make it convenient, but you're in a position where this is a rehab and there isn't equity, and he's in a tough position. So it makes sense to try and get that seller carry note at 0% for 10 years. That'd be awesome, because there's nothing like 0% money, obviously. And 10 years, no matter what happens to the real estate market, it's likely to have rebounded within 10 years.
It's like a 5-year cyclic thing, usually, it seems like, and interest rates, I doubt. And my prediction, which is obviously not probably spot on at all, but it's I'm thinking within the next 10 years, like, we'll be a little bit lower at some point in time. So that would give me a little bit more of a cushion anyway. And yeah, if I was able to get 0% for that 10 years, that'd be great. He bought the place. He wants that purchase price, but he hadn't done anything to it for the last 2 years. He wants to offload all these. So I think that he'd be definitely willing to do that. So I don't think it's a crazy ask.
Right.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yep. Best you can do is ask. So here's what I would do, because I don't have a hybrid model for my Deal Evaluator yet, but you can put in whatever you plan to pay him monthly right here, because he is like a private money lender to you, right? Like he's lending you $19,000. So you would just put the monthly payment in here. So if it's $125 a month, then you just put that in there and it will factor all of that in. So let's just put that in there for now. Now the equity, here's the reason why it's saying negative 82,000. It's because it's not planning on you doing, usually with subject to deals, we don't go in and do a huge rehab. That's just typically not what happens. So this is being calculated off of the fair market price right here, off of the 450. But if you are able to get the value up to 425, and so now let's say now after you've done the $80,000 rehab, if that's what you're going to do, and you have a 525 property, and that is actually now the fair market value, you've gotten the fair value up to the ARV, then you come down here and it's showing you as only negative 7,000 equity, which is a lot better than the other number. So you're still negative equity from that perspective on it. So that's something to keep in mind there. You have a 4% loan, so that's good. And then if, depending on what that seller carry looks like, you'll end up with like effectively a blended rate. You know what I'm saying? But if you get 0% on that, then the blended rate will be like a 3 point something ultimately for your debt on this property. It'll be like a blended rate between the 4, and then if it's a 0, then you can get a blended rate calculator off of Google and put it in, and you can figure out technically what your interest rate is on the total debt with the two different loans. Doesn't really matter too much. It's just good to kind of know where you're at. I'm kind of curious to come over to this long-term rental tab and see what happens. I might break this whole thing here. So
Yeah, I have one, and I put in the numbers and it exploded. So good luck.
all right. So you think that you can raise the rents up to $2,000 per unit?
Yeah, I mean the average. There's one right by it. It's pretty much like identical, and it's around 2,000. But we can put the average is 1,850. So if you want to put the numbers in as 1,850, that'd be fine. Either way. I mean, I'm gonna shoot for we'll go conservative.
Okay, so total then 3,700 a month. Other income, pet fees, storage. You might put something there, but for now, unless you have a specific thing, we can just keep going. So then over here, I have these variable percentages, and you can come in here and change what you anticipate budgeting for repairs, right? Capital expenditures, utilities are usually just a flat rate. Management fees, vacancy is a phantom expense. It doesn't cost you anything, but still you budget it as if it does.
I've been using so the property manager, roughly, if I was to do a full turnover and have a tenant come in, I think it's like 99 per unit is what he would do to cover it, and then the first half of the month's rent would be factored in. So it works out to be like 9.6%, but it depends if I'm keeping that one tenant in or not. So I've been running it off of 5% vacancy, 5% maintenance, and then 9.6% with the thought in mind that I'm rehabbing one unit entirely, and then I'm fixing her stuff that she needs up front. So I've been doing 9.655.
Right. So close enough to 10. We could just keep it there. And then it's really up to you. So if this property is rehabbed to the T, then you're right. You probably aren't going to have, like, your CapEx expenses are probably going to be very minimal. Capital expenditures, some people differentiate. They have two line items, one for repairs, and that's like make readies, changing a light bulb or painting a wall or a room. But then the CapEx being like foundation systems, roof, sewer, things that have to get done on any property over like a 30-year time span. I tend to be conservative on rentals. I've held some rentals before, and so I just put in like, okay, 10%, 10%, 10%, 10%. That's the way I am. But you might decide, like you said, if you only want to go 5% here because you just rehabbed everything, then that's your prerogative. Same thing on vacancy. Like if it's a super hot rental market where you can fill the vacancy while your tenant's moving out so that somebody can be in there like the next month.
Yep.
Awesome. Let's just go with these numbers here, like a little bit more aggressive than your total budgeted expenses. Oh yeah. Do you have any utilities or like landscaping that you anticipate paying on a monthly basis?
I didn't factor in any utilities budgeting, but
there could be sewer. So things often paid by landlord are things like sewer. If there's a sewer bill that's separate.
I think right now that they sent it to me what the tenants paid, but I'll have to find exactly how it's broken down.
What you want to do is get that information directly from the seller. You want to request a full breakdown of all utilities that he pays, and then factor that into your numbers, because the last thing you want is to have already closed and then come to find out that the sewer bill is actually $500 a month or something crazy. It probably isn't. Sometimes water is paid by landlord. Sometimes water and sewer and trash are all lumped together. They might be itemized. You might be able to put the water, if it's metered, separately on the tenants. But those are the kinds of things that you have to know to get a realistic look at the numbers. So you don't have to worry about finding it out right now, Josh, but this is a good exercise because it's prompting you to like, oh man, I need to go figure that out. You know what I mean?
That makes sense.
Yep. So if we just put like $100 there, and the other thing is grass, man. Like on a multifamily, you're going to have to pay in the summer to get that thing cut like twice a month probably. And that could be $100, a month or something.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think the property manager in his contract said he goes and cuts the grass, but no, I'll definitely, I got like a week or so before I'm closing on it. And those were kind of all the things I wanted to pop back over to him and check before I made any final decisions.
Yep, for sure. Good call. So let's put 100 there for utilities, and then maybe another like landscaping. Let's just put 50, just be conservative. So, but then here's your mortgage. So your net monthly cash flow off of these numbers is negative $110. How is that possible? I guess it's just possible. If all these numbers become true, then that's possible.
No, I'm with you. That's because I know the PM is going to be around that 9.6, and then I guess on mine, which totally take all of it into account and go conservative, but also if it's going to be 2,000 like per month, which is probably the case, but we're just going to say 1,850 in case. I was running off of 9.6 and 5 and 5. I mean, if that's how you would typically run it, that's kind of like the main point of the conversation too, is just to see like, am I missing something entirely? Because on mine, if I ran it 9.6 and 5 and 5, it'd be roughly like, I think it was 550 a month positive cash flow.
And so you had just one line item for repairs. So you didn't break it into capital expenditures and repairs like I did, right?
No, because just because the one place, because I'm also putting that, if I put in that 80,000, or say it is 80,000, then that'd be fixing both units. I mean, most of that I'd just take up front. I know like over obviously 30 years, you're going to have it again, but for the most part, that's kind of what I was factoring in. Like if I take care of everything and put that lump sum up front, then it ends up coming out a little less,
So this is how you were running, basically. If you have no utilities or landscape, and if you just went 5% for repairs, 10% about management, 5% vacancy, then you're positive 410 for cash flow.
Yeah, if it goes to 1,850 a month, then that'd be about that.
See, this is the crazy thing about rentals, right? Is how nitpicky and specific, and we're talking only cash flow in the hundreds of dollars here, like a couple hundred either way. But let's say you get $2,000 per. So now this is a best case scenario model where you're at 650 cash flow. If I just reverse everything back to this, then this is a worst case scenario.
Totally. No, I know. I'm with you on that. That's why, I kind of wanted to not be the biggest pessimist when I ran the numbers, but I wanted to also run them conservatively and make sure that I was not going to get it and then be like, oh shit, there's 1,000 more things I got to take into account here. So I do actually like seeing that, because it's like, if I were to have everything at the worst case scenario, where would I be at? And then best case scenario, where would I be at? So huge flip, obviously, going from 650 roughly to negative 110. Big difference in that.
This is the thing about rentals is, I'll just come back here, is in my opinion, and this is controversial, but in my opinion, rentals are a long-term appreciation play. They're not a cash flow play. So from that perspective, if your goal is to capture future appreciation on this deal and cash it out in however long, or refinance 7 years, 5 years, then I understand the play. And in general, I just don't see those being big cash cows. It's just generally how it doesn't play out. If you put $80,000 into this property and your first tenant like destroys the property and you have to evict them, then you have to put another, say, 20 grand or 10 grand into repairing the unit plus evicting them and your holding costs.
Mm-hmm.
And then your cost basis, not your technical cost basis, but your effective cost basis has gone even up higher. And you can write all that off as a loss on your tax return, which is good. And you might get the future appreciation, but that could happen. That's how I look at rental properties in general, is I'm not even really looking at them to make me any money. I just want them to pay for themselves. And as long as the property is appreciating over time, it's going to be a good tax play for me, number one. But then number two, I will get to capture that future appreciation eventually. That's my baseline on rentals. So when I look at those numbers, I'm not like, oh, no cash flow. It's like, well, I don't expect cash flow anyways. I know it's a controversial statement, but that's the way I look at that. Now go ahead and respond.
Not to cut you off, but it's actually funny that you bring it up, saying it's controversial, because when I was looking at this and if you're going to use like the 4 pillars, right, and do cash flow, appreciation, depreciation, principal pay down, the cash flow was kind of finicky because it could be, I mean, even when I ran it in both scenarios, I mean, I think my lowest was like around 150 a month. And then the highest was around that 650. But I was trying to see if I was just a dumb, and I was missing this completely because if you looked at Columbus, and I know that, you can't speculate, but I mean, even if you did 3%, which is roughly that average for appreciation, and then, so I ran it at 3%, I ran it at 6%. But the past 2 years, I mean, it's been like 8.5, 11 because it's just exploding. But I obviously didn't run it at that. But I ran it at 3%, and just over that 10-year period, if it was a $450,000 purchase price, which if I do the renovations, it probably would actually be 525 appreciating from that point. But say it appreciated from 450 over 10 years, I think it was roughly 605K would be the appreciation. So 154K total. And then at 6 years, it was 355K total. So like 805K over that 10-year period at 6%. So either way, like, and then, even the low end of that's solid because basically the way I looked at it is if I wanted to buy this as an investment property and put 20% down, I'd be putting 90K down. I'd be putting probably about 20K in origination fees. In June, I think the NAR is now making buyers pay 3% as well. So I'd be losing money in that sense. There'd be a lot of fees involved with this. I'd probably be at like 110 all in. And then I would have the rehab on top of that, which is say 70 to 80K. So I'd be at like 180 to 190 all in. And you're basically buying into a place. If it's 450K, it's appreciating at a higher rate than if I'm putting 20K down to a 450K place. But if I was to put that same 20K down on a 100K place, because that 20%, that appreciation would be at a much lower rate, obviously. So it's kind of like if you look at it that way, then the appreciation play, it makes a lot of sense. And then I can write off, I think it'd be like 5,000 roughly I'd save for the appreciation. And if I'm writing that off against the rent, and then the principal pay down too was kind of rough. I just used Carl's mortgage app, but I think it was like 303 principal after 10 years. So all in all, it kind of made sense, but the cash flow, I didn't want to buy something that was just going to be hemorrhaging money every month if that was the case, but that's also offset from appreciation. So that was kind of my thought process. So I'm with you on that. Long drive for a short putt on that explanation, but
You're good.
I agree with you on that one.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that we're having the conversation because it depends on where you're coming from, what your situation is, what you're looking to get out of the real estate, and it's not the same for every single person. You obviously have some funds available to you, and you are okay putting those funds into a property and leaving them there for a while, right? Because that's what's going to happen. You have money to rehab this thing, right? Like you have some funding source, okay. And so you're comfortable leaving that capital in this property for a little while, right? You don't need that back. So most people doing subject to deals and are trying to get financially free off of it, that is not a sustainable model. They're trying to get as little down, be in it for as little as possible to get the big cash flow. But a lot of times that's with seller financing as an exit strategy. But I like that this is an example where, from your perspective, and I agree with you, this is your first one. When I bought my first one, I used a real estate agent to represent me. And actually bought my first property from a wholesaler using an agent to represent me. And I put like 30, I think it was like 20K, but really with my own sweat equity and labor would have been closer to 40K into it of my own hard-earned money. The value of this property is like 450-ish, just in the 400 range. And you're coming in for $20,000 down, which as a percentage of 450 is 4.4% down.
There's so many variables to it because the other thing too is, say in the next 10 years, rates do kind of come back down a little bit at some point in time and I refinance. Well, after doing the rehab, I'm probably going to have that 25% equity to when I do the refinance to keep in the deal. And then I would drop PMI entirely. So my payment would go down $256 a month. Whatever rate I get, say I get the same and it's roughly 4. At that point, the appreciation would probably offset, over those years, any money I'd lost. And then that would be really cash flowing. So I'd drop the PMI entirely. So that was, if we're doing the long play, which I get, you buy any place, the long play works, but you just don't want to be way down in the beginning with cash flow. But even if I'm losing like $100 a month in cash flow, the appreciation offsets that anyway, I feel like. So it doesn't really matter if you're doing it the long way. Yeah. I'm with it on that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, the last thing I'll point out on this calculator here is some numbers down here. Like if we go with your scenario where you're looking at $400 a month roughly cash flow, if these numbers play out, okay, theoretically, then you have cap rate of 5.49%, cash on cash return about 5%. And really, that's just because you're putting in, look at the total front end expenses are about $100,000, right? You got your rehab, you got your down payment. And so what you're getting back off of that is, these are roughly the numbers of what you're looking at. And so it's up to you whether you decide if these are good numbers, if they're good enough for you to go forward and do the deal. But at least you have some sense of where the numbers are at for the return on the capital that you're putting in. Don't neglect to acknowledge just how hefty an 80 grand rehab is. I mean, there are that will time, and it could be some headaches in there because that is a lot of stuff to be done. Maybe you have a good contractor, but the bigger the rehab, the bigger the risk. And
Totally.
so there's that factor to consider as well.
No, I appreciate the input, man. I think the one last bit I got for you is the question you probably get all the time, but the due on sales clause. The attorney had I thought it was kind of an interesting viewpoint on it, but I know that if you get a property roughly in that first 30 days, you can get a demand letter if they realize it has changed. A lot of times you can call and they will be like, hey, you're still making payments. It's fine because it costs more to foreclose. But, that would obviously be rough if that happened. One thing he said I could do to kind of mitigate the risk of that happening is if you open up an LLC, which I was planning on doing anyway, but if you open it up with the name of the property, like as the name of the LLC, then they might just think the guy transferred it into his own LLC, just naming it the property. I don't know if is that like, should I do anything on the front end to kind of mitigate that risk happening or that chance of that happening, or, is it just low risk, or I don't know if it's happened to you or,
no, it's very low risk. It hardly ever happens.
Yeah.
The thing that most commonly is done, and I teach in my course, and I have the paperwork packages for this, is you put it into a land trust. I read that. A revocable trust. Some people call it a land trust. And you could do the LLC, but that's more obvious of a red flag. I mean, I'm surprised the attorney doesn't know Garn Saint Germain. He might know that act, but it allows homeowners to transfer the title of their property into a trust for estate planning purposes, and a bank can't call the note due. It's in law. However, let me just qualify that and say, if it's your trust, then they can call the note due because ownership has changed. But because it's a trust, the lender has no idea who the members are in the trust. Similar to the LLC idea, but here's the thing. With an LLC, you can go to opencorporates.com and see who the registered agent is, and you can track that down a lot more than you can a trust. So I always close a subject to deal in the name of a trust, and the trust is on the deed. It's on the insurance policy, and the borrower / seller is an additional insured. Some people do additional interest, but as long as they're on the front deck page, the front declarations page of the insurance policy with the lender, first position Sub2 lender as the mortgagee, here's the loan number, their insurance, that's what you need to do. That's how I do my insurance policies, and that's sufficient enough to sleep really well at night.
Okay. I'll probably end up doing that then. I got till next Friday, so I don't know.
Attorneys don't like land trusts. Some of them don't like land trusts, so you might run into an issue.
Oh, fair.
Depending on who your attorney is.
I guess. That's fine. I'll end up doing that, but it seems like the risk is still low, even if you don't put it into a trust or an LLC. Like a lot of times, right? But you might as well.
Yeah, it's still low. Who's the lender?
I think it's Flagship.
Flagstar.
Oh, sorry, yeah, Flagstar. That's it.
Flagstar. Okay, they're a big. I don't know if they're the servicer or the lender, but they're huge. I'm only ever really concerned with smaller
Lenders.
lenders. Yeah. So with Flagstar, you should be fine. We got a couple with them and haven't had any issues. But I would advise against putting it in your own name. An LLC, a lot of people do it in LLC. You'll probably be fine. But the safest thing, in my opinion, is to use a trust. And the nice thing about the trust is that you have a lot more anonymity, and then within the trust, your LLC can be the sole beneficiary. So you can still have it be your LLC. You get the liability protection of an LLC, but you get the anonymity of the trust, and so that's
Gotcha. Yeah.
the best of both worlds. Yeah, in my opinion. So
No, that's great advice, honestly.
yep.
So,
Yeah, Josh. Cool, man. Hey, it was fun to go over this deal with you, man. Thanks for sharing this and being open to recording this video. I think a lot of people find value in it, and I'm excited for you to get your first one, man. It sounds like you're on a great trajectory. So
I appreciate it. Yeah, honestly, there's definitely a lot of help, a lot of insight. So I appreciate that. And yeah, definitely gives me a lot more perspective on everything I'm getting into. Because I ran numbers, but not necessarily all as transparent as when we put it in the old the calculator that you have. So totally get it. But no, I appreciate it, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Yep, definitely. Keep us updated on what happens. Shoot me an email if you end up closing on it. Okay, I'd be curious to learn. Okay,
of course.
All right.
Take it easy. Thank you.
Sounds good, Josh. All right, take care, man. Bye.